Hello, and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host, Rob. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Gunslinger Fighter subclass, which is not actually an official subclass. This was from Critical Role, Matt Mercer's Critical Role, and originally, it was actually a character class from like Pathfinder First Edition, which is what they were originally playing in their group before D&D 5th Edition. And basically they just tried to like port it straight over to 5th edition. And as a result, well, I think the class has definitely some really cool mechanics and some interesting ideas. It also is a little clunky in places because they're literally trying to adapt Pathfinder 1st edition into D&D 5th, right? And, so they didn't have as many subclasses back then, especially to work with. They didn't have things like the Arcane Archer or some of these others to kind of like pattern things after. And I think Matt Mercer was a little worried that the Gunslinger might be too overpowered. And so some of the negative downsides to the class, like misfires, for example, can be very crippling. And I think that's one of my problems that I personally have with the Gunslinger. It's not that it's a bad class. It's just that I don't think there's any other class in the game except for maybe the Wild Magic Sorcerer who just like on a bad dice roll can completely cripple or disable themselves from combat. Now, granted, the Sorcerer could blow up the whole party perhaps, so there is that. But the odds of the Gunslinger just taking himself out of the fight with a misfire is actually way, way, way higher. And I do think that's a bit of an issue. We also didn't have like feats like Gunner back then. We didn't have, we just didn't have a lot of like the splat books that have come since then. And, power creep's been a definite and real thing since then. So I think that while the class has some cool ideas and while I kind of like it, I think that there's some real drawbacks here too. So that's for the class design. Another problem that I really want to bring up is that if you're in a campaign where you're able to like get firearms and you can where you can actually get ammunition and other people know how to make ammunition, that's not so bad. But if you literally have to like just keep taking downtime to manufacture your own ammunition and your own guns constantly, that could get very expensive, and it can be very, very like tedious, especially if your dungeon master is very, like kind of a stickler for forcing you guys to take the appropriate amount of downtime for everything, right? So bear that in mind, right? And I do want to make it clear, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of having firearms in D&D, but I do think that it's appropriate for some settings. And for when I made my Whitespire campaign and then the Broken Lands campaign that took place in the same game world, I had firearms in those campaigns, and they were there since the beginning. Nobody actually used firearms in the first campaign in Whitespire, but they did meet an NPC who was using firearms at a fairly low level, and they knew about their existence. And then in the Broken Lands campaign, the party's rogue decided to learn to use firearms, grabbed a gunner feat, and went and helped a bunch of dwarves who gave him some firearms and taught him how to like take care of them and manufacture ammo and stuff like that, right? And it ended up being like this huge side quest that they had to do. But anyways, so I'm not some like D&D purist who's like guns, no guns, no guns, and the only races that should ever exist are humans, dwarves, elves, and maybe halflings, just because they were in The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that in some campaigns I think it's cool, but you definitely want to check with your dungeon master before you want to play a class like this, and just make sure that he's on board and this is kind of going to fit the theme or some of the themes going on there, right? Anyways, like I said, there are some downsides, but this class can also do a lot of damage. So anyways, let's get into here and take a look at it. So when you first hit level 3 as a fighter and choose your subclass, obviously you're going to take the Gunslinger. So starting at level 3, you're going to get the Firearm Proficiency. Your proficiency with firearms, allowing you to add your proficiency bonus to attacks made with firearms. It's also worth mentioning Yet firearms count as ranged weapons, and the archery fighting style, despite being called archery, actually just applies to all ranged weapons, right? So if you have archery fighting style, you could use that as a gunslinger, and it's going to help you out. Anyways, you also get, at level 3, Gunsmith. Upon choosing this archetype at 3rd level, you gain proficiency with Tinker's tools. You may use them to craft ammunition at half the cost, repair damaged firearms, or even draft and create new ones, DM's discretion. Some extremely experimental and intricate firearms are only available through crafting. And this is one of the things I do think is kind of cool with the class, is you could make some really weird and exotic, neat guns, right? When I used to play Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, there's a bunch of the stuff down here. But anyways, the dwarves, especially in Warhammer, have some crazy guns, like organ guns and stuff, which are kind of like, you know, they have like shotguns, but they're like 9 barrels and stuff, and blow up in your face half the time. But if they don't, they're gonna blow up whatever you're aiming at, and, you know. And then they try to do that with cannons and stuff as well, which is even crazier, of course. So, you know, I do think some of that kind of stuff could be pretty fun. And I do like the idea of being able to like invent and create your own weapons. It's one of the cooler aspects of this subclass for sure. Anyways, firearm properties. So it talks about how, you know, firearms are new and volatile technology and have the following properties, right? So you have reload. A weapon can be fired a number of times equal to its reload score before you must spend 1 attack or 1 action to reload. You must have 1 free hand to reload a firearm. Now, I don't know how this works with the gunner feat that was available in Tasha's. Let's just read gunner really quickly. It says you have a quick hand and a keen eye when employing firearms, granting you the following benefits. Increase your dexterity score by 1 to a maximum of 20. You gain proficiency with firearms, and you ignore the loading properties of firearms, and being within 5 feet of a hostile creature doesn't impose disadvantage on your ranged attack rolls. So if I'm allowed to like use the gunner feat to ignore like the reloading properties, I am definitely taking that feat. I'm probably going with some sort of race like variant human or custom that allows me to have that feat at level 1. And yeah, and I'm never going to worry about having to reload my weapons ever, because that is a crippling weakness of this subclass, is that like so many of your guns have like a reload value of like 1 or 2, and you're having to use an action or an attack to reload the weapon, you know. Now granted, you are a fighter. By level 11 you've got 3 attacks around, so you could shoot, reload, shoot again, but you know, that is eating into a lot of your attacks. Anyways, misfire. Whenever you make an attack roll with a firearm and the dice roll is equal to or lower than the weapon's misfire score, the weapon misfires. Most of these have like a misfire score of 1, but some of them have like 2 or 3. So if you roll a natural 1, 2, or 3, a weapon misfires. It's not great. So on a misfire, the attack misses, and the weapon cannot be used again until you spend an action to try and repair it. To repair your firearm, you must make a successful Tinker Tools check, DC equals to 8 plus your misfire. Oh, did I read that part about Tinker's Tool? Oh yeah, I did. Okay, anyways. If your check fails, the weapon is broken and must be mended out of combat at a quarter the cost of the firearm. Creatures who use a firearm without being proficient increase the weapon's misfire score by 1, which to be honest isn't a huge amount, but still. So it's getting bad. So basically, if you get a misfire, you can use an action to try to like unjam it or fix it really quickly. But if that fails, it's broken and you have to fix it at cost, or at a quarter the cost of the firearm out of combat. So that's not great. Misfires are pretty horrible. And then finally we have explosive. Not all weapons have the explosive property, by the way. But upon a hit, everything within 5 feet of the target must make a dexterity saving throw, DC equal to 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus your dexterity modifier, or suffer 1d8 fire damage. If the weapon misses, the ammunition fails to detonate or bounces away harmlessly before doing so. So it only matters if you hit, right? Anyways, They talk about the ammunition property here. All firearms require ammunition to make an attack, and due to their rare nature, ammunition may be near impossible to find or purchase. However, if materials are gathered, you can craft ammunition yourself using your tinker's tools at half the cost. Each firearm uses its own unique ammunition and is generally sold or crafted in batches listed below next to the price. So we'll go through the firearms towards the end of the video. We'll keep going through the main abilities for now. Anyways, also, still at level 3, you get the Adept marksman ability. This gives you powerful trick shots that you can use to disable or damage your opponents using your firearms or for some other purposes as well, right? So, you'll learn 2 trick shots of your choice, which are detailed under the trick shots below. Many maneuvers enhance an attack in some way. Each use of a trick shot must be declared before the attack roll is made, and you can only use 1 trick shot per attack. So unlike, say, a Paladin Smite, where you could like crit and then be like, oh, hey, I guess I'm going to smite on that attack. You have to declare you're using a trick shot before you roll the attack dice. And your trick shots are kind of like the Arcane Archer abilities or the Battlemaster Fighter abilities. And they kind of have some of the same advantages and disadvantages. Some are clearly better than others. And this is not meant as a shot at Battlemasters. I love Battlemasters and I think they are amazing. But if you've ever played one of the high levels, you'll find what I discovered, which is that when you're level 3 and you get your first 3 maneuvers and you've got your 4 superiority dice, it's pretty great. And then by level 7 you get 2 more maneuvers. And at this point you've chosen your 5 favorites off the list. And note, none of these are like gated or tiered or anything. You just got a giant list and you've picked your 5 favorite. But then by level 10 you're picking 2 more. So now you're up to your 7 favorite. And I gotta be honest, for me, picking 3 was pretty good because I could find 3 really good ones. There was even a 4th one I really wanted, but I had to save it. And there was a 5th one I thought was going to be pretty good, but maybe a little more circumstantial. By the time you get into your top 7 picks, though, you're throwing in some stuff that you're not going to use very much. And then at level 15, you get 2 more. So now you get your top 9 picks. And that's not bad necessarily. The thing that sucks, though, is that you're just getting to higher and higher levels. And you're getting abilities that when you read them, you're like, oh yeah, I remember this. And I didn't want it back at level 3. And I still didn't want it at level 7. And I didn't want it again at level 10. What did the wizard get? Oh, he's getting 8th level spells. And I'm getting my 9th favorite ability from the list that I could have taken at level 3 if it was any good. I mean, imagine if the wizard could have taken Maze at level 3. You know? Looking at a different game entirely. Anyways, that's just a quick rant about Battlemasters. Battlemasters are great, but Battlemasters are like this. They start out great, and then you just kind of coast downhill ever since then. Not saying they go downhill, right? They still get better, just like everybody gets better. Just saying that, you know, they're very front-end loaded, right? Whereas the champion starts at the bottom of that hill, but he just keeps climbing. Unfortunately for champions, though, by the time you're getting really good, most campaigns are over. So, unless your campaign's going to go to like level 20, you know, you're probably going to be, well, let's say at least like 15, right? If it's going to 15 or higher, you're probably going to be somewhat satisfied by the end of your career. But, you know, when you're like level 3 and you have 1 attack around and you doubled your crit chance, it's a little underwhelming compared to the Battlemaster. He's got all these great things he can do. But anyways, that was a giant rant about Battlemasters for no particular reason. I don't know why I even got on that topic. Sorry. But I'm leaving it in anyways because it's authentic. Anyways, so trick shots. We'll talk about your trick shots in a minute. So, you learn an additional trick shot of your choice at level 7, 10, 15, and 18. Each time you learn a new trick shot, you can also replace one trick shot you know with a different one. And you also get Grit, which, by the way, is just a great name for an ability. You gain a number of Grit points equal to your Wisdom modifier, minimum of 1. You gain 1 expended Grit point each time you roll a 20 on the d20 for an attack roll with a firearm, or deal a killing blow with a firearm to a creature of significant threat. DM's discretion. I don't know what they consider to be a significant threat. Maybe it's like big bad evil guy, but whatever. You regain all expended grit points after a short or long rest. I do like that you can like get them back by getting natural 20s. That does give you a bit of sustain. If you're in a campaign where you're doing a lot of like deep dungeon runs and you can't necessarily rest all the time, or your DM likes to put you on a timer all the time, and it's like you have to save the villagers from the evil cult who's going to sacrifice them in 1.5 hours. Oh, you're going to take a short rest and spend one of your 1.5 hours resting, are you? Oh, that's going to be bad for the villagers. And you're like, okay, guess we're not going to rest. I'll just keep going with no abilities. So whereas at least now, if you get a crit, you can regain some grit and keep going, you know. I do like abilities like that where it gives you a bit more sustain, right? On the other hand, if you're in a campaign where you get one encounter a day and you can just blow everything on that one encounter, it doesn't really matter much, right? Anyways, we'll go through the trick shots in a minute too. We'll finish the rest of the abilities, then we'll come back. Anyways, level 7, Quick Draw. When you reach 7th level, you add a proficiency bonus to your initiative. Very nice. You can also stow a firearm, then draw another firearm as a single object interaction on your turn. So usually you can interact with an object, but this one actually allows you to like put away one gun and then draw another one, which if you don't have the gunner feat is probably better than reloading, honestly. Like, why are you going to waste half your attacks reloading your gun when you could just be like, yeah, I've got 6 guns on me and they're all loaded. And, you know, no safeties because the Middle Ages, but whatever, you know. Yeah, and then you just get a fight and you're just like, bang, bang. Bang, bang. Keep going, you know. Throw them away like an action movie or something, you know, whatever, right? That could be okay. You also, 10th level, Rapid Repair. Upon reaching 10th level, you learn how to quickly attempt to repair a jammed gun. You can spend a grit point to attempt to repair a misfired, but not broken, firearm as a bonus action. So earlier it said that if you get a misfire, you can spend an action to try to like unjam your gun or fix it. But if it fails, it's broken and has to be repaired out of combat. That still happens if you fail, but now instead of spending an action, you can do it as a bonus action, which, to be fair, is a lot better. Especially as a fighter. You don't want to be spending all your actions repairing your gun. You could be making 3 or 4 attacks around with that action, right? You know, especially by level 10. You're one level away from 11, right? You're going to be making 3 attacks every round at 11. Anyways, 15th level, Lightning Reload. You can reload any firearm as a bonus action. Okay. Better than what we had before, unless you were allowing the gunner feat. And then just ignoring the loading properly entirely. Anyways. Vicious Intent, level 18. At 18th level, your firearm attacks score a critical hit on a 19 or 20, and you regain a grit point on a roll of 19 or 20 on a d20 attack roll. So basically, you just double your crit range and regain twice as much grit. This is pretty awesome, except that you're already 18th level. So that does kind of suck a little, because that's a great ability. But, you know, still, if you're in a high-level campaign, I mean, like by 18th level, you're attacking 3 times a round. You're almost 20th, in fact. You're going to be attacking 4 a round. You're critting on a 19 or 20 now. Like, you're going to be recovering a lot of grit, right? So that is okay. You also get Hemorrhaging Critical. Whenever you score a critical hit on an attack with a firearm, the target automatically suffers half the damage from the attack at the end of its next turn. Now, I'm not saying this is a bad ability, right? Obviously, just getting extra damage is great. I kind of like the idea of this, like, bleeding damage from the wound, although I don't know why a sword wouldn't cause bleed damage over time either, but whatever, let's not go down that road. My problem with it is that it just necessitates more bookkeeping and record keeping. Like, how many times are you going to forget that, oh yeah, I had a critical and that thing was supposed to take more bleed damage at the end of the turn, you know? Like, I wish it just did more damage up front. Like I said, I get the idea that it's causing it to like bleed out, and so it's doing this damage in the next round. But like I said, like a battle axe should technically do that. A sword should technically do that, you know? I just wish it did just maybe more damage up front. Like maybe treat it like half-orc savage critical. And it does, instead of doing double the weapon die, it does like triple the weapon die or whatever, right? Something along those lines, right? Or, I don't know. Just if it happened instantly, you wouldn't have to worry about forgetting it. It's not going to require a bunch of like bookkeeping, and people are like, oh yeah, you were supposed to do, and then you have to go back in time and try to repair the damage, and half the time you forget, and it's just too late. You talk about it after the game, and you're like, oh yeah, I crit that guy. Oh, and then he crit the paladin, and she died. Oh, wait, the paladin could have lived. Whatever. Anyways, not a bad ability, but again, just a little clunky and awkward, I think, when it could have been, probably a little more streamlined, right? I do think this is a class that if they were to go back and like redo it now and rebalance it in light of like all the other books that have come out since and stuff, I think it would be actually a lot easier and a lot funner to play. I'm not saying that Matt Mercer did a bad job on it or anything. Like I said, they were porting something. I mean, Pathfinder was already like a D&D clone, essentially, or ripoff. So you're taking something that was adapted from Dungeons and Dragons, like 3rd and 3.5, and now you're taking this thing that was adapted from that, and now you're adapting that to D&D, right? And especially like 5th edition, early on, before we really had a lot of other material. I think they did a good job. I just think that a lot of 5th edition has really been about like trying to streamline and simplify a lot of rules that in the past were like really convoluted and complex, right? And I think that if the class were redone these days, it would kind of fit more philosophically in line with 5th edition, which in my opinion would probably be better. But anyways, onto the trick shots. That covers all your abilities, or at least all the subclass abilities. Obviously, you have the core fighter abilities still, right? Trick shots. So in alphabetical order, we have bullying shot. You can use the powerful blast and thundering sound of your firearm to shake the resolve of a creature. You expend 1 grit point while making a charisma intimidation check to gain advantage on the roll. Apparently you don't expend a bullet though, so I thought you'd be like firing it up in the air to scare them or something, but apparently you're not doing that. You're just expending grit. I don't mind this ability. I think that it's one that I might pick up later if we don't really have like a charisma guy really who kind of does this stuff already. Because honestly, intimidation is a pretty fine ability, but I don't think that this would be like a core ability of my class. There's just so many other ones that I'd take first, right? But it's nice that it's something that's out of combat to give you at least a little something else. But I don't know that I'm making a charisma gunslinger necessarily, so unless I'm playing Lost Ark. Apparently they're all charisma gunslingers in that game. But anyways, seriously, take a look at them. Dazing shot. When you make a firearm attack against a creature, you can expend 1 grit point to attempt to dizzy your opponent. On a hit, the creature suffers normal damage and must make a Constitution saving throw or suffer disadvantage on attacks until the end of their next turn. This ability is pretty awesome, honestly. Again, you do have to declare this before you hit, so you could miss, and then you're, out of grit point, which sucks. And it does get a Constitution saving throw, so if it passes that, you're out of grit point, which also still sucks. And Constitution happens to be like the best saving throw monsters have on average, right? Statistically across the board, right? So those are all bad things. But disadvantage on all of its attacks until it's the end of its next turn is pretty good. Like, it's not the next attack or one attack or whatever, just all its attacks. And if it has multiple attacks, that could be very, very nice. Deadeye shot. When you make a firearm attack against a creature, you can expend 1 grit point to gain advantage on the attack roll. This ability I like quite a bit. Now, that is rather costly because it's only 1 attack, right? And like I said, you can be making 3 or 4 attacks around, possibly action surging and doubling that up. You're going to spend grit to give you some advantage on all those? Like, you probably don't have enough grit for that. But because misfires can be so crippling to this subclass, the ability to give yourself advantage does really help to negate that problem a lot. It's unfortunate that it'd be nice if it was like to do it to, maybe for all your attacks this round with this particular firearm or something. That'd be even better, of course. But, I don't mind that ability at all, though, especially if I'm using a gun that has like a higher misfire range and, kind of could be a little iffy. That'd probably be a good time to use something like this. And we have disarming shot. When you make a firearm attack against a creature, you can spend 1 grit point to attempt to shoot an object from their hands. On a hit, the creature suffers normal damage and must succeed on a strength saving throw or drop 1 held object of your choice and have the object be pushed 10 feet away from you. This isn't bad just from the fact that, like, a lot of things that disarm things just knock it out of their hands and then they can just pick it up again, right? Whereas this actually knocks it away, which, if they want to try to retrieve it, that could provoke opportunity attacks. They're going to have to use some movement to go get it. It's a lot more difficult for them to retrieve suddenly, right? So that's not too bad either. I do wish it did a little extra damage on top of that. Like if you look at battle master maneuvers, you're spending your superiority die, but most of them are also doing damage equal to your superiority die, in addition to whatever other effect they have, right? But, whatever. Forceful shot. You're doing this at good range. Let's point that out, though. Battle Master's probably not. When you make a firearm attack against a creature, the Battle Master could in some cases, but you know what I'm saying. You definitely are. Now, when you make a firearm attack against a creature, you can expend 1 grit point to attempt to trip them up and force them back. On a hit, the creature suffers normal damage and must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed 15 feet away from you. Pushes and pulls and stuff like that are really handy in combat, especially if you have a party that's able to take advantage of it. I don't know that this is really the most reliable push you have. They're getting strength saving throw. You are having to spend grit. Compared to, say, like a repelling blast of a warlock where it's just infinitely spammable, essentially, But, it's still a good ability. Force movement is nice. So, not a bad ability to choose from. Next we have piercing shot. When you make a firearm attack against a creature, you can spend 1 grit point to attempt to fire through multiple opponents. The initial attack gains a +1 to the firearm's misfire score. On a hit, the creature suffers normal damage, and you make an attack roll with disadvantage against every creature in a line directly behind the target with your first range increment. Only the initial attack can misfire. So there is that. You can't misfire on the rest of them. And you are rolling with disadvantage, so it is more likely. This is one that I really want to like, but I just feel like, they have to be in a line. I get disadvantage to try and hit them. I just think that even if it was like you get to attack another creature, there's one creature direct, that's behind them or in a line behind them, but do it normally, that would be like a lot more useful. The fact that I have to like expend my grit, hope to hit the first guy, then hope to hit more guys while rolling with disadvantage. It's a really cool concept. I just don't know how practical it really is, Violent shot. When you make a firearm attack against a creature, you can expend 1 or more grit points to enhance the volatility of the attack. For each grit point expended, the attack gains a +2 to the firearm's misfire score. If the attack hits, you can roll 1 additional weapon die per hit or per grit point, spent when determining the damage. So this is an interesting ability because it's one of the only ones that allows you to spend like a bunch of grit points if you wanted. And it does increase the misfire chance. But, additional weapon die per grit point, that could be interesting in the right circumstances. It'd be so good if you could like roll a crit and then decide to use it, but of course you can't. So anyways, finally we have winging shot. When you make a firearm attack against a creature, you can expend 1 grit point to attempt to topple a moving target. On a hit, the creature suffers normal damage and must make a strength saving throw or be knocked prone. I think this would be pretty decent as like a held action. The problem is that often in D&D, because everything's segmented into like turns, it's kind of like, you move and then you take your attack actions and, you're doing your stuff. And then it's the monster's turn and then he moves. So it's not like you're able to be like, he's moving, oh, I'm going to like shoot him now. It's like, no, you just had your turn. You moved, you shot, you did your stuff. Or else maybe the monster moved in front of you. And, so he advances or charges the party with his great axe, because, assume it's an orc chieftain or something like that, right? And you're like, oh, I'm going to use my winging shot on him. It's like, well, you can't, because it's not your turn. It's like, oh, that's right. Because the way D&D works is he runs at the party and then attacks us, and then I shoot him. I don't shoot him while he's running in. Like I said, this does have the potential to be like useful as like a held action or something like that, which I think could be kind of interesting. Again, another ability, kind of like trip attack, right, for Battle Master. I wish it just did like extra damage on top of everything else, right? But whatever. So let's take a quick look at the firearms themselves, and then I'll give my final thoughts on the class. And bear in mind, these are just the ones that they used in Critical Role for the most part. And you can invent your own. I will try to see if I can download a chart or something, and I'll put that into this video so you can actually look at it all. Or maybe I'll just make a chart or something. Anyways, so we got the pistol, D10 piercing, reload of 4, misfire of 1. Honestly, it's one of the better weapons you could go with. Reload of 4 is pretty decent, right? And only a 1 misfire. We got the musket, D12 piercing, twice the range of the pistol though. It's two-handed though, has a reload of 1 and a misfire of 2. The pepper box, D10 piercing, 80 short range and 320 long range. So, kind of halfway between the pistol and the musket. Has a reload of 6 though, and a misfire of 2. So at least you can fire a lot of shots with that thing. Then you've got the blunderbuss. 2d8 piercing damage. Ranges of 15 and 60, so pretty short range weapon. Has a reload of 1 and a misfire of 2. Ouch. But it does do 2d8 piercings. That is a fair decent chunk of damage up front. Then we have Bad News from Critical Role fame, of course. 2d12 piercing damage. So twice a great axe, right? Range 200 and 800. So 800 at long range. It's two-handed, has a reload of 1 and a misfire of 3. Bad News was kind of supposed to be like a sniper rifle, but ended up getting used for a lot of stuff, it turns out. Then we have a hand mortar, 2d8 fire damage, range of 30 and 60. I should have read ranges for all of them, but I didn't bother, but whatever. Has reload of 1, misfire of 3, and the explosive property, which we've already discussed. So those are the sample ones they give. That's the class and its abilities. Like I said, I do think that it's a really interesting idea. I quite liked the Gunslinger books by Stephen King, although some were definitely better than others, and the ending was just absolutely awful. But, let's not get started on that. That'll be another 10-minute rant. I think that it's a cool concept. I think it suffers from the fact that it came from a different game and then was ported over and was ported early in 5th edition too, right? I think that if it was to be readapted now, that it probably would have been a lot simpler class. It wouldn't have a lot of the clunkiness that I've talked about and some of the drawbacks. I really have a problem with some of the misfires and stuff, right? And I don't have a problem with the idea of guns misfiring. It's just that is very, very clunky. And I wish that like when I did misfires in my campaign, right, which I mentioned, and basically I used a similar mechanic where most of the guns misfired on one, some misfired on a natural one or two. But I also, the operator got a saving throw, and if they made the saving throw, then the gun didn't get to attack for the rest of the round. Like, so if they had more than one attack, so that was kind of it for the round, but could still function normally. They didn't have to repair it or anything else. They just kind of jammed and they had to like clear the gun essentially, right? The only way I treated it as a misfire that would actually damage the gun, which never happened, would have been if they attacked with advantage or disadvantage and got double ones and then also missed the saving throw. All right, then your gun's pretty toast. But I like the idea that they get some sort of way to avoid it, right? Some of these guns misfiring on like a 3 or less, that's a lot, I mean, you're getting 3 times as many misfires as you are crits, at least until level 18 or so, right? So that is not a small thing. And the fact that you have to then like spend actions or even at higher levels a bonus action to clear it is kind of a big deal. And I mean, some of the guns are very hard hitting, don't get me wrong, right? But like a pistol or even a musket, you're looking at like a D10 or a D12 for damage. That is pretty considerable, but I mean, a D12 is the same as a great axe. And I can't help but feel like a champion fighter, for example, which is pretty baseline fighter, right? If they've got like a great axe and they're, using like great weapon mastery and you've got, this and you're using sharpshooter, I don't know that you're going to out damage them just because you've got things like misfires to worry about, let alone comparing it to somebody like a battle master who can use like maneuvers to try to like boost their damage and stuff like that. The champion's going to be critting more often than you anyways. And I mean, by the time they're 15, they're critting on an 18, 19, or 20. You're not getting your expended crit range till 18, and then it's only a 19 or 20. So I do think that if you're able to use like the gunner feat and ignore the reload property, essentially, that would go a long way to helping your class out, right? So I would definitely talk to a DM and say like, hey, I know there's a big thing in here, and like reload is a big part of the gunner or of the gunslinger subclass. But if I take the gunner feat, can I basically just ignore reloads entirely? And if your DM's cool with that, that's going to help a lot. If you're able to like mitigate some of the problems with misfires, again, that helps a lot. If you're able to make your own guns, that like you might not care if the class is the most mechanically solid class to play, if it's just cool and fun. And I think that like when I watched Critical Role and you watch Percy, like everybody got excited when he breaks out like things like bad news and stuff, right? Because I mean, it's that high risk, high reward. It misfires on a 3 or less, but it also does big damage. It's got the huge range and stuff, and that kind of stuff is like really just fun and cool and very like thematic of the character, right? So when you think of like that Critical Role season 1, a lot of the things you're thinking of are these kind of unique and flavorful things about the world, right? And things like a Gunslinger were on that list as being some of these cool and unique things, right? So I think if you're just looking for something that's going to be along that theme, you just want a character that's going to be kind of different, and you want to use guns because, everybody can use bows, and it's like, yeah, I want to try something different and maybe make my own guns and do something really cool and make like an organ gun or something that's, like an 8-barreled shotgun where you got like 4 on top and 4 on the bottom or something crazy like that, right? Like that kind of stuff can be really, really neat, right? It's just that I also think that along with all the good parts, there's some parts that are really, really frustrating. And if I'm in a campaign where my DM is going to be like, well, you have to like follow all these, reloads exactly as is, and we're going to treat misfires exactly as is, and it's going to be like, this could be, it could be like a real like bucket of cold water on what would have been a really fun character, right? But I think that if you're going to allow the gunner feat, which I totally would if I was a dungeon master, and then just say, like, you know what, you can just ignore the load property. I mean, that's basically what crossbow expert does. If you're using a crossbow, you can just ignore the load penalty, right? So why not? I think that would help to mitigate a lot. I don't mind misfires so much because it does kind of bring some like uniqueness to the guns, and kind of it makes them feel different than a crossbow or a bow, right? So I do like that idea. It's just that some of them can be like really crippling. So, if I'm able to, like, if I was a DM, I would probably, in light of all the stuff we've gotten since and all the new material, I'd probably be like, I'm going to treat misfires, the misfire ranges and everything exactly the same. But if you roll misfire, you have to, I will allow you to make, like, say, a dexterity saving throw. If you fail that, the gun is jammed. And, and if you try to repair it and fail, the gun is broken, right? So, but just give them that extra step so it's not just, oh, you misfired, guess you're out of the fight. Or at least switching weapons, right? I mean, you could do that, I guess. So I think that's kind of one of the keys to gunners, maybe, or the gunslinger, is to maybe just have, like, 8 guns on yourself at all times. And then you're like, it's jammed. Use this one. Now that one's jammed. Use this one. Shotgun time, whatever, right? So, like I said, I think it's a cool idea. I think that it'd be a lot of fun. I really think that a character like this is going to be a very memorable one and one that'll probably stand out a lot in the campaign. My only fear is that it's going to stand out as much for the tediousness of constantly having to repair your guns out of combat as for the coolness and uniqueness of the character. But anyways, that's everything I have on the Gunslinger. Feel free to like, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, give me your comments in the comments section. I know there's probably some like rabid Critical Role fans out there who are just gonna like freak out and type mean stuff in the comments section. Like, try to control yourselves. But it's fine. I realize I've kind of probably not been the most charitable to the gunslingers that some people might have hoped for. But I'm just trying to be honest with what I see, right? I think that if the class were done these days, I think Matt Mercer would probably give us something that was more in line with how everything else in 5th edition has kind of gone. Whereas, I'm not blaming him for what we got, right? He's porting it from a different game system, basically trying to make it as close to that as possible. And, we didn't have things like the gunner feat back then. We did, we had basically the player's handbook, right? So he was just making up all this stuff on his own. And for that, I give him all the credit in the world. Like, he literally designed his own campaign setting, which is never easy. He streams his games, which, invites you to plenty of criticism online, right? I mean, for every person out there who absolutely loves Critical Role, there's also somebody out there who just, like, complains about it and takes shots at Matt Mercer all day, every day, right? So the fact that he's putting himself out there, and in my opinion, is an exemplary DM. Like, he is an absolute master of the craft, in my opinion. And yes, it helps that he has, a bunch of professional voice actors playing, and that he himself is a professional voice actor, and they're able to do like different voices, and their characters are like excellent, and they have a production crew, and it's highly commercialized and stuff. That all helps to make it a more entertaining show. But at the heart of it all, it's just a bunch of guys playing Dungeons and Dragons. And like I said, I think he's an excellent, excellent dungeon master. So none of this is meant as a shot at Matt Mercer. But I'm just saying that, the product that we got is kind of like a product of the times, right? It'd be like if I reviewed something from the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide that isn't the Blade Singer. And it's just like, oh yeah, this subclass kind of sucks. Like the Purple Dragon Knight, for example, right? Which I'll probably be covering next. The Purple Dragon Knight. Anyways, like, we all kind of know, like, some of the stuff from the earlier books just isn't as good as the stuff from the newer books. That's just a fact, right? So anyways, that's everything. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.